Only God's plan for salvation will work, and holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. So these two go very well together in that sense of recognizing what God's plan for salvation is and how that kind of differs from our perspective of what God's plan of salvation is. So our perspective is more so in reference to our daily lives and what we see as real. And to that, how we could apply God's plan for salvation is definitely a lot more applicable in understanding than opposed to what God's plan for salvation is in the grand scheme of things, the bigger picture. Right? The bigger picture is a little more seeming complex to our little minds. Thinking about just the whole totality of what the world is for an example, as being one of these, say, processes through this plan of salvation. So this is learning in that sense of how and what this is about calling for salvation, that this calls for salvation. It is not calling for the sense of argument or discussion. It is calling for healing. It's calling for that forgiveness, that you actually are in this scenario, this situation, because forgiveness is being called out of you. Like you're trying to find salvation and you get into these scenarios, these situations, so that it can come out of you. It's like some slime being pulled out of you. So you have to get into these situations that involve this idea of separation, these resentments and grievances, in order to get into the position where application is necessary. Right? Forgiveness is not necessary in the eternities. Right? Forgiveness is not necessary if you are one with all creation. Forgiveness is not necessary. Forgiveness is only applicable when you see separation and these ideas of resentments, grievances, disturbing things, some things that are upsetting to you or anything like that, which a grievance is. So in that sense of recognizing that what you are learning here, this is where it goes into the school. We're here to learn. What are we here to learn? And so many people take that and it's like, oh, we're here to learn how to be enlightened beings, or we're here to learn how to be good people, or love one another as I have loved you, and all these different things, which are applicable and beautiful things that help in the whole process. But essentially what the world is for is hard to describe, but in the sense of you take up an idea, how would you know how to choose to not take up this idea again if you didn't confront every time in which that idea was present to choose something different again, right? So let's say that in a different way. You have this idea of separation, and with this idea of separation, you have resentments and grievances, things that are upsetting to you, okay? You get into these situations, it brings up an upsetting belief in your mind, okay? It's disturbing. Someone's saying something, it's offensive. Now this is actually an indicator that there's the idea of separation there. I believe I'm separate from this person. I believe I judge these words. I don't like these words being used or these actions being done, but I have this obsession with separation instead. So if I'm training in a way to learn how not to use that idea of separation anymore, I have to see that as an opportunity. Oh, this is an opportunity to choose unity again, to choose salvation again. And through that, I have to forgive the resentment, forgive the grievances, forgive it, let it go, to a real extent of depth of really, truly, honestly, letting it completely let go, disappear through your psyche, and accept that wholeness and unity instead. So we have to recognize that through this, as far as only God's plan for salvation will work, is not about the salvation in the other things. Everything can be used in the direction of that salvation if you use it properly. But if you don't use it properly, you're assuming that the salvation, say you're in the scenario, it's upsetting, the salvation seems to be getting out of it, right? The salvation seems to be bashing their faces in. The salvation seems to be, this guy needs to go to therapy. The salvation seems to be, I'm going to call 911. And while any of these things might be applicable and necessary, if the situation calls for it, completely discerned by you, in that recognition also that the salvation never seems to be complete. No matter what, it's always going to happen again and again and again. And in so many different ways that there's reasons to be upset again and again and again. It really keeps coming around because it has nothing to do with the scenarios. It has to do with your mind involving itself in the scenarios. And so the mind is where the salvation is being chosen. It doesn't matter if you think, choice is not of the body. Bodies don't make choices. If the mind's not there, the body's just limp, dead, right? It's the same with spirit. Spirit doesn't make choices. So many people think spirit makes choices. Spirit doesn't make choices. It is neutral just like the body. It does nothing. It's more like static noise without consciousness there. So consciousness makes choice. It processes what's there and then makes its choices between it, right? It chooses this way or that way. So if we can just identify where choice is made, then we'll realize where training is being made as well. Of course, along this whole journey, you're processing, trying to figure out what on earth is going on. What is this or that? What is life? Who is life? How is this? Who am I? I don't even know anymore, right? It's just going all over the place. And of course, as you're starting to recognize, to whatever degree, you get challenged throughout these days with these scenarios, and just remember that the salvation is within myself. The salvation from all of these issues, all these problems, all these scenarios is within myself. That's where the problem is and the solution is, all in the same place. And if I can just recognize that, that is God's plan for salvation. In the grand scheme of things, a little more intense, but as far as right here, believing I'm in situations with separate people, separation, God's plan of salvation is a matter of choice.